Tim is a forensic economist, as you can see from the banner, a historian of equity, law, and policy. He first determines the substance of a transaction forensically from the actual terms of the nominal securities and collateral documentation. Tim has read more than 1 million pages. He says he reads a new book every single week. And the bottom line, after reading so much, after 40 years of research, is that there is virtually no mortgage in the world that holds the value that paper is even printed on. It's saturated with criminal law violations. So Tim, thank you so much for being here and for doing this work.
No problem. I'm appreciative of getting it out there because it's so important what's going on. There's a criminal rate of interest in Canada at 60% per annum. But if you receive interest in advance, that's an infinite rate of conversions. And it's illegal. And they knew that it was, and they said the government decided that they would just not prosecute when it's done by a bank, but they'll put the little people, poor people, into jail for the same offense. If you agree to pay the bank 12% per annum and make monthly payments, the bank is going to go determine the interest charges at 1% a month. And most people think that's the right thing to do or the right way to do it, but the bankers are in the business of knowing that it's not. So, you've ever heard the expression, they cannot bear close scrutiny?
Got it.
The financial system on this planet cannot bear any scrutiny, let alone close scrutiny. It's become so cartoonishly criminal. See, so this is a typical mortgage out there today. Wonderful woman here in Victoria. She bought her first house in 1980, and she spent 40 years of her life running it as a bed and breakfast and acquiring 2 other properties, such that the value of the 3 of them represents her entire pension and everything else, and their entire life savings and everything else. And she fell into the clutches of these so-called mortgage brokers and these things. It's called Versatile Mortgage Corp and Upton Capital Corp. And here's what the deal was. Forensically, or by its terms, the nominal agreement and transaction was that if Ms. Price would first unconditionally underwrite and assume a debt and registered charge of $800,000 in favor of Versatile Upton, and unconditionally convey all right, title, and interest in her property, which she had the clear title to, at 608 Tretch Street, Victoria, as security, therefore, and for a further payment of $800,000 on the maturity date, then Versatile and Upton might, but would not be contractually obligated to or liable to, advance a net $718,000 or any amount to Ms. Price. What they do is that when you start reading the mortgage, it says, in return for the lender agreeing to lend the principal amount to the borrower, the lender does not have to advance the principal amount to the borrower. Now, someone like me who's basically sane, I read that and I say, wait a minute, what do you mean in return for the lender agreeing to lend, the lender does not have to lend? That's double-speak. That's double-speak. You see, it is not possible to make a loan without making the loan. It's not possible to do anything without doing it. And if you, right? See, now, if you had an actual law, a legitimate law that made it an offense, a criminal offense, to sell a given vehicle or a certain vehicle for more than $10,000, and you were charged with selling that vehicle to another for $20,000, and you said to the judge, well, Your Honor, we agreed that the price of the vehicle was $10,000 plus another $10,000 for my agreement to sell it to him. What do you think the judge is going to say? He's going to convict you twice, once for the offense and once for insulting the court's intelligence or the judge's intelligence with such a stupid story or position. When you sign that mortgage, most people, when they're in there to do it, they're on the verge of wetting their pants. It is the single biggest thing. They're not thinking clearly, and that's when the predators come out, and that's when they know to strike. They can get you to sign anything, so why don't they put some things in there that are maybe a little iffy, you know? And then they do it, then it went, one thing leads to another and another. Now this thing says, in return for the lender agreeing to lend the principal amount, that's what's called a fault or a fictitious or illusory consideration. because it's not possible to make a loan without making the loan. So you can't pay separately for the banker's agreement. And the bankers are in the business of knowing this, and it's been that way for 300 years, at least. You know, the earliest one I found was from the 1700s. A man shall not have interest for his money and a collateral advantage besides for the loan of it. Then what prevents me from saying, if I'm a banker, and that's what they get you to do, is they get you to sign a document stating that the mortgage is for $1 million, but you only get $800,000. And you have to give the banker a $200,000 kickback under the table by a separate side agreement that isn't mentioned in the mortgage.
Right.
And in the face of a criminal code section 397 that says it is a criminal offense to omit a material particular from a document or valuable security. Oh, we should actually go to that double whammy fraud thing.
Sure, let's do it.
If you want to put it on the thing, for at least the past 120 years, the balance of humanity has proved unable to protect itself from the multifaceted fraud in the following form of terms from a banker or other nominal pretended creditor, and even a genuine moneylender. I will loan you $100,000 at 10% per annum, provided that you give me a security claiming and swearing that I have loaned you $120,000 at 8%, plus a $20,000 check as a kickback directly or indirectly drawn against the falsified inflated principal amount and by separate side agreement and not mentioned in the falsified security. Simplifying more generally, I will loan you a certain amount at a certain rate of interest, provided that you agree to falsify the security to claim and swear that I have loaned you a greater amount and at a lower rate than in fact, plus a kickback equal to the difference to juice my current income as well. See, now, this is what I'm talking about, is that, you see, this is how the lawyer's mind works in criminal jurisdiction. They always think that the remedy to one criminal act is to commit another to balance it out. Even though that's called a compounding of the felony in most cases. Sometimes in like this, it's two separate criminal offenses. But you see what's happening. If you were to simply say, I will loan you a certain amount of interest at a certain rate of interest, provided that you agree to falsify the security to claim and swear that I have loaned you a greater amount and a lower rate than in fact, if you stop there, that's a very serious criminal act, and that would have massive repercussions in the financial markets. You could say, I'll loan you $1, but you have to give me a sworn security that states and evidences that I loaned you $1 million. See, there would be no limit to it. So now, but that's one separate crime. But so they balance it by saying, oh, plus you have to give us a kickback equal to the difference to juice my current income as well. That's a separate crime. That's another crime, and it's analogous to the joke that I first heard about 30, 40 years ago, which is, boss, it's only 3 o'clock. Where are you going? And the employee says, well, this morning I arrived an hour late, and so this afternoon I am making up for it by leaving an hour early. See? And the thing is that your mind, the human mind, will fall for that. If you say it fast, if you don't emphasize it, that will pass most people's brains without comment, and they don't realize that they're being double whammy fraud. Instead of, they say one is asserted as a remedy to the first, whereas in fact it's a compounding and a doubling of the fraud. Okay, let's go back to 1926 and how to falsify securities. There's a Section 6 of the Interest Act says that a bank has to disclose on the mortgage the actual or net advance received by the borrower and the real rate of interest measured against that amount. But they just can't do it. They won't do it. So anyways, in 1926, the editor of Dominion Law Report responds by an editor's note explaining to the legal profession how to falsify securities and get away with it. He was encouraging the lawyers, because they were all going to jail. The whole system was going to collapse because this practice is so amazingly crooked and so pervasive that if this decision were allowed to stand, it would have collapsed the whole system, and all the lawyers would have become responsible, and they would have been going to jail. Okay? So what he did was, he says, look, we've all got to start doing this. Just take out all the stops and start falsifying everything to put all pressure on the Ontario Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada to overturn it. And that's exactly what happened. Just to give you an example, it was just for a little bridge financing or whatever, but it was $95,000. The mortgage states that the rate of interest is 13.99%. Then there's another document that says, oh, by the way, under the Provincial Mortgage Brokers Act, we have to reveal to you that the real rate of interest is 23.9%. And we've disguised it through various fees, etc. And then I did the calculations, and the actual rate of interest is 33.9%. So here she is. She's got almost all her equity in very valuable real estate in downtown Victoria, and she's paying 34% on a mortgage-secured credit that in the same planet where grandma and grandpa are getting 2% on their savings. The whole thing, between the three, or among the three properties and the 12 or 13 mortgages she took out over the entire period, it's just these massive whacks of interest in advance that are concealed from the registered mortgage, because they say it was done by secret side agreement. And that process has been going on for 40 years. And now we're at the point where if you understand what's going on, and I can show you in advance, and I will say, okay, here's what you're going to see. If you go through this thing, they're going to use bait and switch. They're going to use false receipts. They're going to use fictitious or illusory consideration. They're going to use all this. And you'll read this thing and you go, who wrote this? This says this mortgage was not prepared by a lawyer. It was prepared by Dr. Evil. I mean, they really are cartoonishly criminal, because nobody ever looks at them. When you start challenging them on it, say, well, that's a little complicated. You're just trying to get out of your debts to this bank, this virtuous bank. Oh, and everything. And so, but what's going on is it's become the point where these mortgages are so scandalously criminal. And then in 1930, the Supreme Court of Canada overturned a unanimous 5-judge panel of the Ontario Court of Appeal that upheld this decision and said, no, you can't beat the securities law this way. And it had taken 5 years to get from the trial decision to the Ontario Court of Appeal decision. And then just 88 days later, an equally unanimous 5-judge panel of the Supreme Court of Canada overturned them both. And on the grounds that they said, well, due to a set of really, really bizarre circumstances, the interest security law does not happen to apply to this particular loan. And then for the next 90 years to 2020, every court in Canada has ruled the same thing. Whenever this act comes up, the law just doesn't happen to apply to this particular loan. You can't get your head, it is so crooked. It's all fraud, it's all crime all the time. And that's why people can't see it. It's been normalized. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, is because the question was, am I in fact the creditor here, which is credit reinsurance? Yeah, you are the lead underwriter. The money for the loan does not even exist unless and until you underwrite it by agreeing that you owe it under the promissory note. See, right. You're the virtuous party in the whole thing. And the banker says, yes, but we control access. So in order for us to agree that you can advance us secured credit, you have to also agree as a condition of access to falsify the security to claim that you're the debtor instead of the creditor. That makes you a liar and the issuer of a false security, so that you cannot now sue us in equity because your hands are now dirty. And it was about year 2000, after 10 years of doing this, and reading these documents and seeing them. I was sitting there at my desk one day, and my friend Alex, he's a farmer in Saskatchewan, he had a mortgage, and he had signed it in consideration of $150,000 received by me from the credit union, the receipt of which is hereby acknowledged, and he swore it under oath and penalty of perjury before a lawyer. But because of the circumstances, it was 6 months later before they actually made the loan, or what they called the loan. So it just suddenly hit me like a flash. Wait a minute. As in when he signed that, swearing under oath and penalty of perjury, that wasn't true. He was lying through his teeth. But the lawyer said, you just have to sign here. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And we tried it a few times. We said, okay, man, this, it's awfully iffy because you're saying some pretty nasty stuff here, Tim, about 14, 15 different racketeering offenses. So we had some people go into the lawyer's office and they pretended to want a mortgage and it was approved. And then when they went to sign the documents, they complained about it. And the lawyers all did the same. They all went, well, you don't need to worry about it. And the more you push it, they finally, all of them to the individual lawyer said, look, do you want the loan or don't you? If you do, sign here, raise your right hand, swear, and sign here. If you don't, then there's the door. Take it or leave it. And literally, the contracts all state that you agree that the bank, that notwithstanding the execution or registration of this mortgage, which transfers everything to the bank unequivocally and irrevocably, the bank does not have to advance any money unless they want to. Now, that turns it into a wager and allows the bank to double their accounting profits again. And it all gets rolled over directly into their capital assets, and so never shows up as current taxable income, as an added bonus on top of all this other stuff.